It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome to Jill on Money. That's me, Jill Schlesinger. And we're talking about money. And when I say we, that pronoun refers to me and our executive producer extraordinaire, Mark, who's recently celebrated his big birthday. He celebrated it by coming to work, which was good. You don't call out on your birthday? Nah, he wouldn't do that. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's our email address. I just want to start the show off in a somewhat unusual way. We don't usually just bang into our emails, but I just found this one interesting because Adam is concerned about changes in how we are banking at most of our major banks. He says that checks are being deposited by photographing them and your checks don't get returned and printed statements are no longer prepared and all that. So he wants to know, what can an average bank customer do to protect him or herself against the fallout of even a minor internal cyber breakdown at a bank, let alone a full-blown hacking attack on the entire banking system? Hey, look, I don't think we can protect ourselves from a full-blown hacking attack on the banking system. Let's be honest. We lived through Equifax, right? We're subject to this, but we are not necessarily able to prevent it. But the banks, thankfully, which are regulated either by the OCC or by the Federal Reserve, do have to have huge backups. So if you think about it, any sort of breakdown, they'll be able to replicate what was there before. They have very specific rules under which they operate. So I don't want you to freak out too much about that. The bigger issue, which I don't think it really applies to you, is that most of the things that happen in our cyber lives can be spotted by looking at your banking statement. And I think that one of the weird changes that's occurred as we've gone to electronic banking is that people don't, when you used to get your statement from the bank and those returned checks, you would look at everything because it was a prompt. But now we don't have that. The bank says, hey, here's your stuff. And you're like, click, archive, gone. I would suggest that I'm betting Adam does this, but we should all be paying closer attention to our bank accounts. We want to flag anything weird on that account. And of course, just for general good practices, you should be changing your password. You shouldn't be checking your bank account when you're at work. It's all sorts of things that you should be doing. Hey, Mark, maybe we'll just let's maybe do that Equifax data breach. Put that in the show notes just so people know good practices about their cyber stuff. Okay. So let's start the way we usually start now with a caller. It's Susan on the line. She's calling from outside of Chicago. Did I see how I did that? Outside of Chicago to make a differentiation. What can I do for you?
So I had a question around target date funds. So I've been looking at my 401k plan, and just to keep it simple, I was thinking of doing a target date. Mm-hmm. So it'll automatically adjust over time. But I wasn't sure what date to target because I don't really know when I'm going to retire. So wanted to get your thoughts and advice on how to handle that.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am 36. Mm-hmm. I am single, no kids, at least not any human ones that I have to pay for college for. Uh-huh. And I make around $120K a year.
Have you already started contributing to your retirement account?
Yes, I have about $100,000 in my 401k right now.
And is your plan currently that you would take that $100,000 and pop it all into a target date fund?
That's what I'm thinking. I have some of it in a target date fund now, and then I have some of it in a few other funds. Just because when I started the plan, I didn't have the target date funds available. Mm-hmm. So I have like a stock index and a bond fund, and the plan has some tools to help you determine what to pick based on your age and risk level and all that. So I used those tools a while back. I was just reassessing it and trying to figure out what I should do going forward.
Okay, very interesting. What is the fund company that is the stock index fund that you own right now?
It's a Vanguard.
Okay. Is the whole plan held at Vanguard, or is it just Vanguard funds inside of something else?
It's managed by Fidelity, and Vanguard is, there's a number of options with Vanguard, but there are some other options there as well.
Do you have in your menu of options something like that would be called either a Fidelity or a Vanguard fund called something like the Intermediate Term Bond Index? Something like that?
I think so.
I think so, too. I'm going to guess. I think that a target date fund is probably unnecessary for you. I know that it sort of feels like, oh, you know what? I can just outsource this to someone else.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. But all that you're doing is you're basically saying, I'm going to outsource this so they're going to put money in an index fund, which is fine, but there's usually a little cost for that. And target date funds are notoriously difficult to discern from one another. So here's what I mean. You might say to me, okay, I'm 36. So therefore, what I'd like to do is put my money in a 2050 retirement plan because I'll probably retire when I'm 65, 70 years old, whatever, right? And what you might find is if you click through that target date fund, you might find, holy smokes, that's way riskier than I'm comfortable with. Because a lot of the target date funds, this is what we found out after the financial crisis, tend to be investing not to that date of 20, 35, 40, 50, 55, but they're presuming that you get to that date and then need the money to last for 30 more years, which would argue on paper to be much riskier than perhaps something that you might feel comfortable with. So what I'm going to suggest is going back to the drawing board. I know I'm going to make you work on this one. I'm sorry about that. But what I would do is I would go through and look at that nice little, maybe what they call it is a risk assessment or whatever, an asset allocation calculator. I would go through that and I would see what it comes up with. And maybe it comes up with, hey, you should be 70% stocks and 30% bonds. Then just use the stock index and the bond index and call it a day. And then you can take that maybe that same exact questionnaire and maybe look at it in a year, 2 years, whatever. But usually it would only change dramatically if something in your life changed. Not if the markets change, but if something in your life changed. Hey, I just inherited $5 million. My risk parameters might be different today. So I think that would probably serve you quite well. And if you'd like, you can feel free to grab a screenshot of the available funds that you have and shoot it to us as an email. And Mark and I will look it over and we can get back to you and tell you which of those index funds is maybe the cheapest fund to own. Because some of them do have extra costs. So we just would prefer to make sure you have the cheapest available option to you.
That would be great.
You are doing fine job. No worries. I think that you don't need a target date fund. I think that you're going to do it. You're going to make your own Susan date fund. Okay?
I love it.
Okay. If you've got a financial question, you want to get on the air, this is what you need to do. Send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. So easy. And during this break, here's another thing that you can do. You can go to the website, JillOnMoney.com. You can read, listen, watch, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back.
Have a finance question? There are many ways to reach the show. You can call anytime at 855-411-JILL, send an email to askjill at jillonmoney.com, or tweet a question on Twitter using the handle @JillOnMoney. Just use the hashtag AskJill.
You're back with Jill on Money. And this is the program that is trying to take the mystery out of your financial life. And it's hard. Sometimes it is hard. You know, it's not just that this stuff can be confusing, but it's so emotional. And that's what usually trips us up more than anything else. Most of you are rational human beings. You're smart people. It's just that you don't realize it, but all this stuff, it's laden with emotion. And so it is hard to act as if it's not. It is. So how do you acknowledge it? How do you move on from it? How do you get some help getting into the right, going in the right direction? Give us a holler. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We are not judgmental. I promise you, whatever is on your mind, it's not stupid. I mean, it might be stupid, but it's not that stupid. No, I'm just kidding you. We're not judgmental here. We want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. We love to take your calls. So if you want to get on the air with us, you've got to send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's what Katrina did, our first caller from Alabama. What can we do for you?
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Sure.
My husband is 65 and I am 58, and so he wants to work until he's about 70, and I don't know. I'm going to try to hang in until I'm at least 62 or so, maybe 65 if I can. I just work part-time. He works full-time.
Okay.
So he is at the point of, in about 4.5 years, actually he's going to be 66 next month, so he's at the point of having to take required distribution in about 4 years.
Okay.
So I just don't know. We've been using the traditional 401k. We haven't even had the option of the Roth 401k until just a few years ago. We haven't really looked into it much. So I just don't know if that's what we should be doing.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about yourself. So you've got a bunch of money in your 401ks, your traditional 401ks. How much is the total that's in your retirement plans right now?
Okay. So he has the traditional 401k and a traditional IRA as well. So he's got about $800,000 in the combination of that. He has about $36,500 in a Roth. I have in my 401k traditional about $616,000 and a Roth of $40,600 or so.
Hold on, I want to make sure you said 616 for your own 401k, right?
Correct.
Oh, fabulous. Fantastic. That's pretty good for working part-time.
Yeah, because I have been maxing out mine forever. He was in a position of not being able to max out his because he was in that higher income. He was limited. And so just recently he's he's working less hours, so he's now able to max out his as well.
That's great. How much do you earn together, approximately?
Approximately $170 a year.
But as you now know, once you have the option of a Roth 401k, you don't even have to really worry about your income level because, it was the Roth IRA which was subject to the phase out, not a Roth 401k, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why it's such a valuable thing when you have a big employer or even a medium-sized employer who offers you both. A lot of people who make more money than would allow them to use a Roth IRA can use a Roth 401k. That being said, I'm interested that you like the idea of a Roth. And I too agree that I think that there is something to be said for having money that has already been taxed, especially since at this point, you guys have, you'll probably by the time you retire have $1.5 million in, traditional 401k assets. It would be nice for you to have money that's already been taxed. So I like that idea. When you retire, will you be entitled to any pension money?
Together, we will, together we will have about, probably about $10,000 a year in pensions between the two of us.
Okay. And Social Security will be about how much?
My husband says that he's looked at it and he thinks that it's going to be better for us that I take his Social Security instead of taking my own.
Okay, good. As long as you've looked at it, and he'll probably have the max. So whatever. Let's say it's about $30,000 in Social Security. How much do you think you need to live on in a given year?
I would say probably $3,000 a month, which would be about $35,000.
Oh my God! I got to move to Alabama if that's all I need. I mean, are you kidding me? That's amazing.
Well, we don't have any. We don't have a bunch of houses. We have one house. We have 2 cars. We're just normal folks. We definitely live below our means.
One of the reasons why you would like to maybe use a Roth is that, as you said, your husband is going, as soon as he retires, you don't have to actually take required minimum distributions if you are still working at that place that offers the 401k. So you may want to say to him, honey, just keep working. I'll retire.
There you go.
So required minimum distributions occur. You don't have to take them if you're still working at the place and you're putting money in.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of interesting. Now, that said, you got a bunch of money and you are eventually going to have to pay tax on that. And the weird thing for you guys is you won't need the money that much. You might need some, right? You're going to have, say, income of 40. Maybe you need 10 grand a year from your portfolio. That's going to be nothing. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to take a required minimum distribution. You're going to have to pay tax on it, and you didn't even need the money.
Right.
Going forward, at least until you retire, you would use the Roth 401k. And
should we both do that?
Yeah, why not? Absolutely. Why not? I think you should. And you know what's kind of cool about it? You'll have some money that's already been taxed. Right. That could be do you have kids? Grown kids?
Well, grown,
In terms of how money is passed down, since you're not going to pull all this money out, what you would try to do is preserve that Roth account and literally never pull money out of it, because a Roth asset is like the best asset to inherit because it's already been taxed. Whereas if the kids inherit the 401k or IRA rollover at some point in the future, when they pull money out of that account, it will be taxed at whatever their tax bracket is at the time. So all that being said, I think it's a good argument for using a Roth 401k. You have it. It's available. And I think that both of you doing that makes a ton of sense. And, I'm sure you're doing this already, but, not too much risk with this portfolio. You just don't need to take a lot of risk. You're in great shape. You've got income. You spend beneath your means. Mark and I will be down there for the retirement party. I've never been to Alabama. Have you, Mark? No. I presume that an Italian and a Jew from New York could get a lot of mileage. You could trot us around as like little exotic zoo animals. It'd be great.
Sure.
And we'd be happy to come and celebrate because you're going to have a pile of money and you should have a big party.
Right.
You're on your way. Good job, Katrina.
And my husband actually, and I heard one of your guests come on one time, and you asked her what's the best money decision she's ever made, and she said that she took all of her money out of the stock market. And I came home and told my husband that because he did that back in I think 2015. He did that, and I've always kind of. Forever it bothered me, but, he sleeps at night. I mean, and it's just like your guest said, I sleep at night, and he does because he has no risk tolerance. So, because we went through the 2008 thing and we're scared to death. But I've kind of gradually gotten back into it, and I'm fine with that. I always feel like I have a little bit more time, but, so anyway, as always, I just love your show. I love all the different variety of guests you have there. Well, and I've recommended it to many, many people.
Fantastic. We love you for that, and we're going to put that on our endless loop in case we need an ego boost. I like the idea of really knowing who you are as an investor, and that's why when some folks will call here and they'll ask about risk and trying to do different things, it is so dependent on who you are. And I think the beauty of what your husband is basically saying is, I know who I am. I cannot trade a good night's sleep for this. That is the end of this segment. There's more ahead. It's Jill on Money. Just give us a holler. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we want to hear from you. So easy. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Or just hop onto our website, JillOnMoney.com. Far right corner, top right, just where your eye goes, contact us. While you're on the website, you can listen to any of our past shows. You can also check out stuff that we're writing. I got a column, I got blogs, I got lots of stuff out there. You can watch some video and TV appearances. You can do it all. Okay? Okay, here's Gretchen, who writes that she has a question about when to claim Social Security. So she is 63 years old, and right now she could collect Social Security because, of course, as soon as you turn 62, you have the opportunity to collect Social Security. But remember, you get a permanent reduction in that benefit. So that's why it behooves every one of us to wait at least until our full retirement age, which is 65, 67, depending on what year you were born. And it's actually best if you could delay until you're 70. That's when you max out your Social Security. So let me tell you a little bit about Gretchen's situation. She's got about $830,000 total. Of that, there is about $320,000 in cash, which is checking savings, and a CD. And then the rest is some stocks and IRA CD, some bonds and treasuries, and some other bonds. Okay. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that she's got about 165 grand in checking savings and another 165 grand in a CD. Now we've got that. She says of that money, which is good money, thank you very much, she's going to blow through about 50 grand. She has to buy a new car. She's got to move. Her new expenses are probably going to be $2,000 a month. Okay, fair enough. And right now, she wants to know, should she take this Social Security benefit? And I think that the reality is, if you got $2,000 a month in expenses, let's think about this. You're 63 now. Let's say that your full retirement age is, should we say 66, Mark? We had to pay for 3 years. Okay, so we got to pay for 3 years of living expenses until you can claim your Social Security and get a higher benefit. So 3 years is 24 grand a year times 3 years. I think you can pay for that. So this is what I would do. I would not claim Social Security right now. I would use some of the money from your stock portfolio, which you say pays dividends of about $11,500 a year. So that's half of your need about. And then I would use the cash that you have for the next 3 years, right? So, worst case scenario is that after you move, you've got, 165 grand in checking, savings, CD, right? And you got another 165 grand in a CD. I would use some of that money. I would use that to live on. And then I would claim Social Security when I turn my full retirement age, because then you will get a higher benefit. I don't know how high, but I'm just telling you, if you go to ssa.gov, you will figure out how big a benefit that would be. So presumably, if it's only going to cost you $2,000 a month to live, and maybe you're underestimating it. Maybe it's $3,000 a month. I don't know. But you said 2. And if that's the case, then you can use the money that you have saved and actually hit your retirement goals by just waiting to claim your Social Security benefit. I should also say, and being prudent that I am, that all those stocks, is there any stock in there that you could sell that would be a loss? Can we free up some cash there? And the reason I'm asking that is that once you start to burn up all this cash, your portfolio is going to look a little out of whack. You're going to have too much money that's in stocks relative to the overall portfolio. So what I would also do is I'd look through that stock portfolio. I would try to determine, do I have anything that has a loss? You probably don't, I know. But is there something you could sell to free up some money? That would be good. So I would absolutely wait to take Social Security till your full retirement age, live off some of your cash, and take a good, long, hard look at that stock portfolio to make sure that you try to secure it a little bit more. Okay? I think that will definitely help you out. And I think that we would very, very much want to hear back from you if I've missed any part of this. Okay? Okay, here is Ellen, who writes, subject, savings account to get the best percentage rate and ability to write checks from if need be. Here's the message. I watch you on CBS. I think you're so good. Thank you for being you. Good job. Thank you. There's a million different places that you can do this. I would encourage you to look at the online alternatives, specifically any savings accounts that you find at depositaccounts.com. You should be able to write. And when you say write checks, are you saying physically write a check? Yeah, I guess you are. Physically writing checks is interesting. Let's do this quick. Depositaccounts.com. If you go there, I'm looking at bank deals. Let's see. There's all sorts of different bank deals. I wonder if you have a credit union available to you. That might be a place to look. I mean, it's very difficult because checking accounts are so stinky anyway. But I would go and look here and see if you've got some opportunity. If you want to actually physically write a check, I would encourage you to try at least to try to do online banking. You will get a better deal by doing that. So go check out depositaccounts.com. Might be happy if you did it. Give us a shout back if you need more help. You are listening to Jill on Money. And if you've got a financial question, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And you can always go to the website, jillonmoney.com, and there you'll find all sorts of fun things. Okay, we will be right back with more of your questions.
Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger. Have a question? Call or email anytime. 855-411-JILL or askjill@jillonmoney.com.
You heard the man. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. That's how you get in touch with us. It's very easy. That is what Charles did. And he basically is asking about how to address a short-term cash crunch. This happens so often. Life is crazy, mercurial, and sometimes you have plenty of money to absorb an unexpected expense, sometimes not so much. So Charles said, this year, some unexpected home improvement and other medical bills for my dogs are expected to completely wipe out my emergency cash fund. Oh, I always put the dogs first, no sweat. I used to have a home equity line for these emergencies. In early 2018, I refinanced my mortgage into a lower rate, and I folded in my home equity line balance because the new tax law no longer permits the deduction of home equity line interest on your federal return. Okay, right? True. I have several options to tap into cash. So 1, withdraw from a Roth IRA. Okay. 2, withdraw from a traditional IRA. 3, borrow from my 401k plan. 4, request a personal loan from my bank. 5, cash one of the checks that I receive in the mail from time to time to create a personal loan. Okay, I'm 58. So I presume penalties would apply for certain IRA withdrawals. I expect to be able to repay the amount in late February 2019 when I get annual bonuses. That's not a guarantee. Bonuses are variable. All right, Charles. There's a couple of things to think about. The 401k, if you're working and you feel comfortable that you're going to stay employed, that's a possibility. I would not withdraw from your traditional IRA. I wouldn't cash in one of the checks that you receive in the mail. So there's the 2 choices that I might consider would be withdraw the money that you've put into a Roth IRA because you can pull your cost basis out as long as it didn't. So you might do that. And, you also may want to try a personal loan, like you said, request a personal loan from your bank. Now, here's the other thing. You may have heard on the show, when were the Marcus guys on? Last year? So last year we had 2 guys on the air from an online bank, Marcus by Goldman Sachs. And I don't know what the amount is that you need, but I know that they do offer no fee fixed rate loans up to 40 grand. And I mean, look, an installment loan is a pretty easy way to do it. They have cheap fees. Cheap interest rates, no fees. So what I would say is that you may want to try it. Maybe it's just give yourself 3 years to pay it back, and that would be possible for you. So I think you should check that out, compare it to your bank, and then also maybe if you just told me how much money you had in the Roth, that could help as well. I think you would probably, if you just want to do a personal loan or a loan against your 401k, if you get canned before you pay back that loan, then that loan would become a taxable event. So I would just kind of compare what the best interest rates are and go from there. Okay? So, I don't know, installment loan with the bank, try that out. Give it a shot. Okay? Lori writes, is it normally a good idea to pay off a mortgage before retiring? I don't know, Lori. It really depends on your situation. A lot of people don't have the luxury of making that decision. It's if you can, sure, but don't use up all of your money that is liquid in order to pay off that mortgage, because you may want that liquidity. That to me is very worthwhile. You always hear me talk about liquidity. The reason I do is that, again, just talking about the situation with Charles, you never know where something comes up. You never know where you run into a health issue. You never know when you run into something where you need to just face the fact that, I got to shell out some money. And if you've paid down your mortgage already, you don't have that money. So paying down a mortgage, which always seemed like the greatest thing in the world, is not necessarily the smartest thing if by paying that mortgage down, you lose access to your money. This is incredibly, incredibly important. So if we could get people to kind of pay attention to lots of different pieces of their financial lives, this would be great. Now, if you don't know whether or not you're in a position to pay down your mortgage, I have a fantastic idea for you. Let us know. Give us a holler. Send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. It's Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And if you tell us a little bit more about what's going on in your life, we could probably help guide you as to whether or not paying down that mortgage makes sense. For some people, it may be great, but for others, it may not work out. And that's why we always encourage you to give us a holler. Without having more details, I can't tell you whether or not this is a good idea for you, but I'm concerned that people have these notions about, I should just pay this down because that's what you're supposed to do. It's not necessarily the case. Everyone's situation is different. Yours is different. Tell us about how different it is. Send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Okay, during the break, head over to JillOnMoney.com, our website. Read, listen, watch, and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. We've got a podcast also. It's not exactly this show. It's a little different. Why don't you subscribe to it? You can either go to our website, JillOnMoney.com. You can also go to Apple, Stitcher, Radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcasts, and subscribe to it. It's called Better Off. Although, I don't know. Things could change. Never know. Andrew writes, I'm 67. I just retired. I've got $400,000 in a retirement account, and I would like to pull 4% out per year. I think that's high. He says, everything's paid for, but I want 4% a year. My JP Morgan fund manager has me in stocks and bonds. What's the percentage you recommend for bonds versus stocks? By the way, my JP Morgan fund manager gets 1.2% to manage that $400,000. So let's just have some fun here for a second. Okay? Let's just pretend that we look at $400,000 times 0.04. Oh, my thumbs were too thick. Hold on a second. Okay. So you're getting 16 grand a year is what you're hoping for from the account. I think that that's too high. I don't think you should take that 4% out, but stay with me. If you were to perhaps replace your JP Morgan fund manager or your JP fund, I don't know if it's a person or you just own JP Morgan funds. If you replace that with, say, a robo-advisor, you could basically take 1% of your $400,000 and that would fall to the bottom line every single year. In other words, if you fire this guy or gal, that money will just drop to you. So here's what I think. Fire the manager, because no one should get paid 1.2%. And if you don't have confidence enough in this person about the percentages, chances are you're going to probably need to be like 60% stocks, 40% bonds. I don't know exactly. I'd have to look at what you have. But I think the easiest way to make more money every year is fire your manager, lower your costs. How about that? Give us a holler if you want more information. You are listening to Jill on Money. When we return, it is the interview hour. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome back. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money. We are live from the Capital One Bank Studios in New York. Mark is smiling because I love saying that so much. You've never heard somebody read a sponsorship with such glee. You know why? Because I'm a business person first and a radio person or a media person second. Like I started my career understanding how important it was to have some phenomenal professionals selling your programming so that somebody could actually pay the bills. And so we are always grateful to our sponsors. It is the middle of September. Did you know that September is actually the worst month of the year for stocks? You always think October is. You think crashes happen in October, right? According to the Stock Traders Almanac, you look back to 1950, and for the Dow and the S&P 500, there's an average decline, 0.7% for the Dow and 0.5% for the S&P 500. So September could be thorny. Okay, we've got a fabulous guest for you this hour. He is a friend of mine. His name is Darrell West. He's Vice President and Director of Governance Studies at the Brookings Institution. He was also the founding director of the Center for Technology Innovation. He's coming on today to talk about his new book. It's called The Future of Work, Robots, AI, and Automation. Here is our interview with my pal, Darrell West. The reason you're here today is that you've written a fascinating book called The Future of Work, Robots, AI, and Automation. So in the beginning of the book, you tell about why you wanted to write this. So recount that story for the listeners.
Well, the reason I wanted to write the book was just the pace of technology innovation is really accelerating. In fact, I think in a few years, people are going to be absolutely shocked because we're going to have driverless cars. Uber already has ordered 24,000 for delivery starting next year. So we're not talking about something that's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now, which is what a lot of people think. It's like it's happening now in road testing, and soon it's going to be happening for a real. You can go into retail stores that are now fully automated. They will track the items you put in your cart. automatically charge your credit card. You will walk out of that store never having dealt with a sales clerk. I've walked into restaurants now where they give you a tablet and you order off the tablet as opposed to from a waiter or a waitress. So it's like we're just going to see all this stuff really picking up.
Should we be nervous about this? Because there are obviously lots of implications. The first thing that you think about is that the revolution that is in place already, it's already started, will displace so many workers. And I think you bring up a statistic which one of your colleagues at the Brookings Institution, Alice Rivlin, former budget director, came up with a stat about just the driverless car and how that would impact trucking. Could see 2.5 million jobs just go away.
People should be nervous about the job impact because Alice has pointed out that driverless trucks are going to displace a lot of truck drivers, and that's a great entry-level job for people coming out of high school. They don't want to go to college, so it's really going to impact them. We're seeing the same thing in the retail sector. I think there are more than 8 million retail clerks in America. There are 1 million taxi drivers and ride-sharing drivers. They're going to be impacted by autonomous vehicles. So if you just add those numbers together, that's almost 12 million jobs, and they're all entry-level jobs. So my concern is not necessarily the people who go to college, go to graduate school, get advanced degrees, know a lot about data. They're going to do perfectly fine. But the entry-level people are going to have a real challenge.
But even those people who go to college, right? Let's say you go to college and you decide I'm going to go be a paralegal. For all I know, the paralegal could be a job that could be automated through AI and through robust searches and engines. I don't need a paralegal anymore. I have a computer that can basically do 80% of what a paralegal would do. So maybe instead of having a staff of 50 paralegals, I need 10. So even those middle office jobs are at risk, right?
Actually, those jobs are being automated through AI because AI is really good at literature reviews, searching past legal cases. There are AI solutions for legal research. So we are used to thinking of automation affecting only blue-collar workers, but as you point out, it is starting to bleed into white-collar occupations as well.
So now instead of going to the schleppy broker who's going to charge you 2.5% or let's just say 5% up front for something and then 1% a year, that's gone. All that money just goes to an investor's bottom line, but it does displace a lot of people who went into the brokerage business.
Actually, finance is going to be on the front lines of automation. I mean, we're already seeing it. I think half of stock market trades already are automated trades. AI solutions are coming into finance to detect fraud. They look for outliers in financial transactions. There's going to be a lot of solutions there. People in brokerage houses are discovering that algorithms and computers actually are pretty good at market investment because they're not as emotional as humans are. So they definitely have an edge on things like that where you want an emphasis on the facts and objective realities.
And you also say in the book that healthcare is an industry that actually has not yet really been disrupted so much by technology. So how do you see healthcare being impacted?
Healthcare has always been slow to embrace technology innovation. It's actually one of the reasons costs are so high there because it's very labor intensive and it's very hard to automate. But even there, we are starting to see things come in. So, for example, radiologists represent a field that are going to be subject to automation because there are AI solutions that are now learning how to read CAT scans and X-rays. And basically, if you show them a lot of CAT scans and say, this is an abnormality and this is a normal reading, if you show them enough, at the end of that process, that software will be almost 95% accurate in reading the CAT scan, which is very close to the accuracy level of a radiologist.
You're kidding. Because I was about to ask you, so what's the accuracy of a human radiologist?
Right now, humans have maybe a 2 to 3 percentage point advantage over those algorithms, but that range is disappearing.
What about in education? I was really fascinated by the idea about how I don't know. So we met through Brown University, right? And you pay gobs and gobs of money to go to a school like that. Is that necessary, or can we just do online learning? Can you forego your 4-year keg party? Do you have to walk past Sigma Chi? Or can you just take an online course and get as much out of it?
Well, Brown, the high cost is completely warranted just by the quality of the faculty. So, thank you to all my former friends who are still on the faculty at Brown.
Right, thank you.
But the answer to your question is, yeah, there are lots of substitutions for real human teaching these days. There are lots of online courses that are very good. There are certificate programs that businesses are putting on. There are these massive online courses that can enroll 100,000 people. Now, of course, the secret is 95% of them do not finish the class, but still, that's 5,000 people who actually are able to finish it. And so,
wait, why don't they finish the class?
Just because the big challenge of online education is it's hard to approximate the same level of student engagement as you see in a teacher-led classroom. So that has been the Achilles heel, and that's one of the things that has limited automation in that field. But yeah, the online classes are getting better. Young people, of course, are growing up as digital natives, so they love everything online. They love their mobile phones. So they are completely comfortable taking education through the internet.
Okay, we'll get back to our interview with Darrell West in just a minute. If you've got a moment during the break, please go to our website, JillOnMoney.com, and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You're going to start seeing some cool offers. Better hurry up. JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger. Have a question? Call or email anytime, 855-411-JILL, or ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com.
You're back with Jill on Money. And we are in the midst of our interview segment with Darrell West. I'll talk about him in just a second, but I think the overarching themes of his brand new book, The Future of Work, Robots, AI, and Automation, are pretty amazing. And I think it might give you pause, might prod you to say to yourself, how do I anticipate that my job, my career could shift? I remember when I first started as a financial planner and I was in the business of giving investment advice, I remember having a doctor as a client. He was a radiologist. And I never forget, he worked 3 days a week in New England, and he made $600,000 a year. Okay? And during the course of him being a client with me, just because of the way that the medical profession kind of advanced, he actually saw a cut to his salary. And he went from, I would say, sort of like 600 for 3 days to 600 to 4 days. And then it was 600 for 5 days. And then it was all of a sudden 500 for 5 days. And I think by the time we finished up, he was down at like 450. Still a great living. But boy, there's a job that could be potentially disrupted by innovation, by robots, by AI and automation. And that is why, according to our guest, Darrell West, workers, we have to be more flexible. Here's more of our interview with Darrell West. In the book, you sort of lay out what's going on with robots and AI and automation. And then you talk about how the workforce is going to have to be more flexible. Why does the workforce have to be more flexible? What if it just stays as is? Give me the worst case scenario right now.
The workforce has to become more flexible just because there's going to be a lot more change, chaos, and uncertainty in the workforce. Now, automation is going to gradually phase in over a 10, 20, and 30-year time period. So it's not like tomorrow we're going to wake up and everything is automated. But what I tell young people today is, like, in my experience, I've had 2 employers in my adult life, Brown University and now the Brookings Institution. I tell young people they're not going to have that experience. They're going to have 6, 7, 8, or 9 different employers. They're going to shift across companies. They may shift across sectors. They're going to have to constantly upgrade their job skills. So it's not that people can't cope with this reality, but it's going to be a different situation. People of my generation and older generation is used to a lot more stability and continuity than is going to be the case for young people.
You also cite a lot of research that shows that people are willing to do this, that they know they need to keep their skill level up. I remember even during the election, we had these, there were these big profiles of, like, these are the people displaced by the economy who are just disgruntled on both sides, right? one guy, I just remember this so well. He's like, I don't want to get retrained as a nurse. I was I worked in a Ford plant for 30 years. I don't want to do that. What's going to happen to somebody like that who's so far in that it's really hard to get him or her to move? How do we help that person get over the hump?
I mean, this is going to be the real challenge. I mean, there certainly are going to be lots of new kinds of jobs that are created through automation, through robots, through artificial intelligence. But the people who are going to lose jobs are not going to have the skills to qualify for many of those jobs. So either one, they're going to get left behind, which is going to be bad for society as a whole, or secondly, they're just going to need a lot of worker retraining to try and qualify them for the new kinds of jobs. The other issue that's going to be problematic is just the geographic disparities. Some of my colleagues at the Brookings Metro program did a study and found that only 15% of the counties in America now generate 64% of the GDP.
Wait, say that again. I love that stat.
15% of the counties in America generate 64% of the GDP.
Holy smokes.
Basically what that means is almost all the economic activity is on the East Coast and the West Coast and a few metropolitan areas in between. And so the problem is many Americans, in fact, 2/3 or more of Americans may end up living in geographic areas where there's no economic activity. We already see that today in rural America, in West Virginia. The opioid crisis is really taking off. There's no economic hope. And so we have to be careful that we don't end up in a situation where all those bad social trends become a lot worse.
The future of work is changing. It's changing as we speak. What's our first decision? Do we want to change with it, or do we want to just let China eat our lunch?
Well, we have no option but to change with it because the automation is going to happen. There's very little regulation in the technology area. American technology companies are, the best in the world. They're going to keep innovating. They're going to keep generating robots that are better, smarter, and cheaper. The same thing is true in terms of artificial intelligence. Like all this stuff is going to take off. So what we need to do is kind of start to make the changes now so that as those workforce ramifications start to unfold over the next 10 and 20 years, people are able to cope with it. And so I talk about the need for lifetime learning, the idea that we invest in education only for people up to about age 25, which is pretty much the current model. That will be obsolete. People are going to have to invest throughout their lives. I propose the development of a lifetime learning account.
I love that idea, by the way. I thought that was a genius idea.
I mean, it's kind of like an IRA in which people can invest. Perhaps their company can match the investment. And then people, as they need to upgrade their job skills, they can draw on that account to take a college class, an online class, or certificate program, whatever it is they need.
I love that idea so much because I also think that, if it starts as a small contribution over time, it's there for you. And I like the idea that, it doesn't matter the application, because obviously there's you have a 529 account. It has to be an accredited institution. Well, that may not be what I need. Maybe I work at CBS News and there's a brand new robotic camera and I have to learn that. And so I would like to take a little extra time to learn how to use that, or there's a new editing software, whatever it is. So I love that idea. And I love the idea that companies are doing a lot of this job training themselves anyway, right?
Absolutely.
It's already happening.
And the other thing we need to do is focus on making benefits much more portable, because in a situation where people are likely to be moving from employer to employer on a much more frequent basis than has been true for my generation, like there are companies, Brookings actually is an example of this, where you have to be there 2 years to get fully vested in the retirement system. Now, if you plan to work there for 25 years, that's not such a big deal. But, we have research assistants who come there, they work a couple years, then they move on to something else. It's like they never get vested in our retirement program. So that's an example where companies need to start changing their practices in a way that accommodate more job churn, more people moving from position to position.
And you say that that's not just with having a 401k but it's also with health insurance. You note that, and I think that's really an interesting thing because you sort of cite that we have to have different types of safety nets for this new workforce. Talk a little bit about the health insurance problem that exists, because obviously a lot of people are tethered to jobs simply for their insurance, and that's still the case.
We're going to have to renegotiate our social contract, and the benefit piece is the big challenge there, because you're going to have people moving from job to job. They need to be able to take their health benefits with them. One of the challenges in America, unlike some other countries, is our benefits, our retirement, our health benefits are all tied to the job. Like when we created these benefits, we wanted to work through private employers. So for much of American history, that has been a real advantage and a real strength. But if you end up in a situation where people are moving from job to job, and there's a certain percentage of the population that is being left behind, the question of how we provide health care for those individuals and retirement benefits is going to be a real challenge.
If we had Medicare for all, if we had a single payer system where everyone got some basic amount of health insurance, would that do the job?
Well, that is one way to solve it. You could have the government playing a major role in setting up exchanges, the way that we saw in the Affordable Care Act. But there are other more moderate versions of that where private companies continue to play a role, but they set up exchanges that facilitate healthcare portability. You could have trade associations or private groups set up exchanges. So there are lots of different ways to do it. But through one of those means, we have to do that.
Right.
Because otherwise, people are going to have a big problem with healthcare.
We'll get back to our interview with Darrell West in just a minute. If you've got a financial question, we want to hear from you. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, an investment question, a retirement question, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Hey, Mark, I don't know if you saw earlier in the month, right after the long Labor Day weekend, there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. And the premise of the article was essentially that people completely underestimate what they need in terms of retirement money. Not so much the total amount, but what they actually will be spending in retirement. The conclusion is that there's no simple 70 to 80% of your total income. It's really drilling down and saying, what will I be doing during retirement? If you need help crunching your numbers in terms of retirement, we would love to help you out. We could probably guide you. We can't crunch the numbers for you, but we can maybe help you understand why running the numbers for your specific situation might end up being better than expected or worse than expected. Anyway, I digress. When we left off with Darrell West, our guest, we're talking more about how, all the different reasons why we have to be so flexible and some of the things that he believes from a public policy standpoint must occur. Unfortunately, someone's got to pay for those things. And so in this concluding segment with Darrell West, he talks about how to pay for all the things necessary for workers to assimilate to the future. Robots, AI, and automation. Here's more of our interview with Darrell West.
In the book, I do try and take the idea of how you pay for these ideas very seriously, because I do think we're going to have to invest more in education. Healthcare is going to be a challenge. Just how you provide benefits for people undergoing all these economic dislocations is going to be a big challenge. Bill Gates, a few years ago, proposed a robot tax, basically saying, hey, if robots are taking the jobs and doing economic activities that humans used to do, we should just tax the robot. And then that's a way to provide financing.
And all of Silicon Valley freaked out on him, right?
Yes. Basically, everybody hated that idea. Because you actually don't want to tax the most innovative and productive part of the economy. Like, that's anti-innovation. So we haven't heard a lot from him since then. You could use the income tax as a way to pay for it. And so, for example, a popular Democratic option is to basically raise the taxes on wealthy people by about 10%. That'll generate $30 or $40 billion a year.
How much do we need to raise to do all the things you want to do?
A lot more than 30 or 40
Sounds
billion.
like it.
It's an expensive proposition.
So in other words, there's not enough rich people to tax to do this.
Basically, the income tax will not do it. So you could do a consumption tax, a sales tax. In Europe, they have the VAT, which is basically a sales tax. Or you could do the idea that I talk about in the book as a solidarity tax. So somehow we're going to have to come up with more money. There are a variety of ways to think about doing it.
That's fascinating. Let me get on to some other things. this stat of yours. 65% of children in grade school today are predicted to work in jobs that have yet to be invented. So 2/3 of kids. So how are we educating our kids right now? What do we need to do differently?
I mean, the problem is we're educating people for the old economy, not the new economy. And, that just simply is not going to work. We can all see that the pace of innovation is picking up. There are going to be a lot of new jobs that are going to be created, but we need to make sure that young people are coming out of high school as well as college with the skills that they're going to need. So they're going to need data skills, but it's not just kind of the nerds who are going to do well in the new environment, like the humanities students can do well, because we need people with good design skills. We need people who can take the technology and put it in a form that's usable for all the rest of us who are not scientific geniuses. So there definitely will be a place for those types of people. The skill that we really need to be educating people for is agility. There's a famous quote from Charles Darwin, the thinker
I've
on
heard of
evolution,
him.
in which he said that in the world of evolution, it's not the strongest or even the most intelligent that is going to survive. It's the most adaptable. And I think that logic applies very much because we're undergoing this transition to a digital economy. We need to teach students skills of agility and adaptability because they're going to need it.
If you're thinking about the workforce, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, what are some courses that we should be taking, using, or at least exploring right now to help upgrade ourselves for what's coming?
People need to be kind of thinking about what are the skills that they need in their particular job or a job that they would want that would help advance them. So it could be a data skill, could be a computer skill, it could be a communication skill. Like we're really going to need much better written and oral communications in the future. So people who are glib and can talk well, we're definitely going to need people like that. Again, the humanities angle is going to be very important. The genius of Steve Jobs was not that he invented the best products at Apple, but he had the best designed products. So people who can understand design, those are going to be very important skills as well.
You know, we interviewed a mathematician on the show last year. Her name is Kathy O'Neill, and she wrote this book called Weapons of Math Destruction. It was sort of like a takedown of how algorithms are misused. But I do think a rudimentary understanding of how algorithms work is also a helpful piece of this.
Even if you want to critique the algorithm, you have to understand how they operate.
Exactly.
And they're actually not that complicated when you start getting into it. The crucial thing in terms of technology innovation and our ability to navigate this is we actually control our own fate. I think we will end up by 2050 in a situation that is either really good if we adopt the solutions that I outlined in my book, or in a situation that is really bad if we don't. I think it's a binary choice. This is not an era where political incrementalism is going to dictate what happens. Like small-scale solutions are not going to solve the problem. So we have to think big. We have to think long-term on a 10, 20, and 30-year time scale. But I think if we make the right choices, we could end up in a situation in 2050 that is really good for many people in America.
As you know, you are a political scientist. When you look at the landscape today, are there politicians that give you hope?
The politicians who give me hope are very few of the current leaders who are all members of the older generation. I think we really need to look to next generation leaders, both on the Republican side as well as on the Democratic side, people who don't like the current polarization, the gridlock, and the hyperpartisanship, and are starting to think creatively. I've had lunch with U.S. senators, and they're trying to think for what is going to be the situation 10 years from now, and how can I position myself for the world that is going to exist. So there are people out there who are forward-leaning on these types of issues.
Thank you so much to Darrell West. We will link to his book, The Future of Work. You should read it because you'll become really smart about robots, AI, and automation. And we will also come back and take more of your questions because this is Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back with Jill on Money. Hey, don't forget to check out the website, JillOnMoney.com, and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We've got a ways to go before we build up to the number that we're looking for by the end of the year. Mark already hit his number like 3 months into the year, so... See, Mark, you set the bar too low. I set it higher, but now my publisher has set it even higher than that. So my initial bogey for Mark was 5 times what he had wanted to get, which he got very quickly. And the publisher now of my new book, which is called The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, which is not out yet, my publisher said, no, I want 5 times what Jill wants. So we got a ways to go. Help us get there. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Just go to JillOnMoney.com. If you've got a financial question, it's very easy to find us. Just send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Okay, so here is Roberta writing that she says that her condo is worth about $470,000. She owes $116,000. She says she's retired. She's doing well between Social Security and a little bit pulling out of her IRA. That seems fine. She says that the condo is worth a lot more now than when she retired 2.5 years ago. So, she admits the only thing wrong about it is that it's a half hour from her grandkids. And she said, when I look at rentals that are closer, they rent is probably, let's say, $2,200, which would equal what she could kind of find like that's the equivalent of her condominium. But it's double her mortgage payment. So her mortgage payment is $1,100. So she would have to tap into her savings about $1,000 a month to do this whole thing. That said, I mean, she would also have the money, right? She would let's just say that after paying some bills off, not just the mortgage, but the closing costs, she'd have to move. So maybe she'd have, let's call it $325. That could last you for a while if you need to rent. The problem is rents can go up and your mortgage is fixed. She's not going to get any inheritance. Her dad's 93. Any words of wisdom? Should I take the money and run? She said, gosh, I'm just kind of nervous that, after living through the financial crisis, maybe I should just take the money and run. I mean, this is less of a financial decision and more of a real life decision. Your grandkids, I don't know how old they are, but a funny thing happens with grandkids. They turn into teenagers, and then all of a sudden they don't really want to see you or their parents. So I'd hate for you to move away from a community that you like. Are your friends there? That's important too. If we added up the money, do I think that you'd be okay? Sure. Because, if you had $325,000 and you needed to take $12,000 out a year, that'll last you a long time. It doesn't do a ton for you just pulling the money out if you're not able to kind of use that money and to your advantage. It's not really like you don't gain a ton. And even if the economy changed like it did in 2008, you'd still have this condo. You'd still only owe $116,000. I'd be very careful before I make this decision. Okay, Linda is starting retirement, and she wants to know about moving her money to more conservative investments. She's got one retirement account. It's a 401k with a former employer. She pays no management fee. And another account for which she does pay a fee. I would like to move some retirement funds out of the stock market into a more conservative investment, maybe one or more CDs, so that I have a cushion. If bear market comes, I can ride it out. I think the money should come from the managed account. The advisor who's in charge of that account is advising me to use some of the money in my non-managed account for this purpose. What do you think? Oh, what a shock. Come on. Guess what? If you take the money out of the managed account and you buy CDs, the guy or gal makes less. Well, let me say one thing. The only reason I would use a 401k to have more conservative investments is if inside your 401k you had a fixed account option that paid you more than you could get from a CD. That might be the one place where I could probably see it. But we'd have to know what the choices are. And again, it would be great if you could reduce your fee. And what are the fees? And how much money do you have with this advisor? Those are my initial thoughts. Okay, this is David who says, a couple of weeks ago you indicated if a person will need the money within 5 years, the money should not be invested in the stock market. I don't think I said 5 years. I think I said within 2 years, but 5 years is a little bit different. So here's what David's case is. He and his wife are retired. He's 64. She's 63. They have a little more than $1 million in a retirement account. The account is partially invested in the stock market, 60% in very conservative, well-diversified mutual funds, 40% in bonds. My wife and I have pensions that cover our needs. However, it is possible we may need some money from the retirement account within the next 5 years. Does the 5-year rule mean we should not have any of the million? No, it's not that. And it really isn't so much of the 5 years. It's really 2 years. If you know, like, you need a car next year, free up the cash to get that car. Okay? That's really what this refers to. So I think, David, you're in good shape. Do not despair. All is well. Hey, do you have a financial question? We want to help you out. But you got to talk to us. Send an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our podcast. It's called Better Off. You can get it on Apple, Stitcher, Radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcasts. Check it out. All right, we'll be right back. You are back with Jill on Money. Before we get to the end of the program, we got one more question from Martha, who's got some credit card debt. And she said she's got lots of debt. The interest rate is killing me. Now, she doesn't say the amount. That's something that's, I think, would be interesting to know, because that could drive a lot of what the next part of this is going to be. But anyway, she questions, do I consolidate at 5% or go to a debt relief organization called Freedom Debt Relief? If I go to this company, will it affect my credit rating or impact my income tax? Your guidance is appreciated. First of all, don't go to this place, because chances are you can negotiate a better deal than they can, and you'll save yourself some money. If you were to consolidate at 5%, that might be good, but it really depends on how quickly you can pay it off. So if it's a ton of debt and you get 5% for a year, and then the interest rate balloons in a year from now and you still have it, then no, then it's not a good idea. You may want to check out some places for personal loans. We had these guys on from Marcus, which they give personal loans up to $40,000 with no fees. And you can just go onto their website, marcus.com, and just kind of check it out. But these are personal loans. They're installment loans. So they will have an end date. It just depends on how much money you actually have to put towards this debt. But I want to encourage people that to tell you that these debt consolidation services tend to not be great deals. They are usually fairly expensive, and often you can do the negotiation yourself. When you negotiate a debt, if they reduce the total amount, that could impact your credit rating. It should not hurt you for income taxes, but it absolutely depends. It's case by case. Okay, I hope that helps. And thanks to everyone who joined in today and wrote and participated. And thanks to Mark Talercio, the best producer in the world. We will see you next week for another fun-filled program. It's Jill on Money. Check out our website, JillOnMoney.com, and shoot us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We're here all week long, so let us know how we can help you out. See you next week.